Hi, Ash. I'm just giving a little brief description
Hi.
of you. Some of you will know Ash in ninth editions because I had my first series of art sold on there, which was very exciting. So, Ash, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a curator, an art curator located in Toronto, and I have a platform that sells original and limited edition prints by emerging artists, and I also curate for brands. So I do public projects as well, which gives me the opportunity to work on sort of intimate domestic living immersive in the moment pieces.
Yay. Okay, so uh, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and then we can open it up to questions below from people. But I guess I wanted to start, especially in this time when everybody's home, and sort of looking for things to do. How can we be more creative and sort of tap into our own creativity?
When thinking about creativity, I always go back to the Maya Angelou quote, you can't use up creativity, the more you use, the more you have. And I think that artists are a really good source of inspiration around this. Um, Artists tend to address and identify things that we often overlook. And I think that by looking at their practice, understanding it, sort of understanding their process, we can really sort of tap into our own creativity, the way that they exercise their imagination. They might, confront the anxieties that we're all experiencing right now in a really head-on way, or they might identify the beauty in everyday domestic household objects, the way that we can sort of tap into that, draw in it. We can learn a lot because I think, particularly in this time, imagination in many ways is a form of hope. And if we can understand an artist's practice in the most human way, we can also draw on that and sort of apply it to our own creative pursuits.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, my next question would be, I think a lot of people, myself included, even though I am an artist, find the visual art world in particular kind of intimidating. What's a good way to introduce yourself to art during this time?
I hear this so often, and I took my first art history course when I was 9.
Of course you did.
When art history, if I'm aging myself here. But I think because the art world is so vast, even I feel intimidated by many areas of it right now because you just cannot know everything. But that's also something I really love about it, is that continually humbling, is that I always have something to learn. And I think that's also really interesting about a profession and an area of interest. And so I would say the first thing that I always encourage people to do is look, like identify. Even Instagram is an amazing platform for this. You can save folders, you can look at artists' Instagrams, you can look at gallery Instagrams, museums, artist run centers, and sort of identify what you're interested in. And also podcasts. I listen to so many podcasts about art history so that you sort of hear this conversational digging deep into any one movement or artist or practice.
What's a good podcast you've been listening to?
Bow Down podcast is by the editor Freeze, and it's all about female artists that are sort of forgotten in history, which I think is really fascinating and something that, even in my own art history education, I didn't experience. And then Art Detective is a great one, Art History BB, and Artsy has a great podcast. There are a lot of them. If you, I can also put together a list for people afterwards.
That would be great.
That research. And then also YouTube videos. There's this hilarious nun named Sister Wendy that sort of goes through different portions of art history, and she's so charming and educated and sweet. And so I use a lot of these resources all the time too, if there's an area of art history that I don't feel particularly fresh on, because you can't be up on it always.
Yeah.
And so I'll search YouTube videos, podcasts, and then also just make sure that I'm visually keeping up with different institutions and galleries that I really like. And I think that's a great way to start, because there's so much to see and do. And if you can't be there in person, I mean, I even do so much of my curatorial research online now because it's available.
Yeah.
So if you want to use this time to learn more about art, there are many, many resources that I can recommend.
Someone just asked, where do you get your creativity from? Because you are very, very creative. I speak from experience. I've known Ash since she was 16 years old. And you inspire me all the time, actually. So,
yeah, well, you're a phenomenal artist. So I think that is actually a great question, because I would say that a lot of my immediate circle, in terms of like Rachel and friends and people that I work with all the time, I have a lot of really wonderful, creative people in my life that are constantly giving me inspiration, and I'm just constantly looking. I want to find inspiration in everything from like a walk to the park to really cool installations or reading exhibition text, or I'm kind of a bit of someone that finds beauty in everything, almost to a fault, because I'm so excited about things. And so I would say just try to keep your eyes open and ears open and listening to people's experiences and watching the world, because I don't know, so much beauty and just draw that.
Yeah. We had Juliet asked, what about a book? Do you recommend, is there any book that you've found valuable?
Ooh, specifically, I'm actually listening right now because I'm two small children. I mostly listen to my books these days. I'm listening to the Marina Abramovich autobiography, and I think that's really interesting because she is a performance artist and a body artist, and that is something totally different to me. And understanding her process and the way that she grew up and the way that she sees art as something really ephemeral, and that it doesn't need to be on the wall, I think has really opened up my eyes to, again, this finding inspiration anywhere and this multidisciplinary practice. And then another one that I've started reading is Ninth Street Women, which is a lot of the female abstract expressionists from New York during the time of Rothko and Pollock that were not previously identified in art history in the way that their male counterparts were. And I really love learning about that too. I particularly like artist autobiographies or biographies because the artist and who the person is fundamental to where I find inspiration.
Yeah. Okay, so then one quick fire question and then one other question. What's the painting behind you? Someone wants to know.
Oh, it's by Jack. He's a British artist, and he's represented by India Dickinson Gallery, and it is gorgeous.
Wait, say his name again because it just cut out.
Oh, Jack Penny.
Jack Penny. Very cool. And then if you're sitting at home and you don't have many art tools, what's the best way to get creative with what you find just at home? I mean, there's tons of artists who work with things that actually have nothing to do with paint or clay or anything like that.
Totally. Found objects are really actually quite popular right now too. And so I've seen people do anything from stacking sponges to using, items in your pantry. And hopefully you have like some level of a writing tool or paper, but you
can use an eyeliner.
Exactly. Yeah. Eyeliner, makeup, sort of, random things from your medicine cabinet, probably. Yeah, you can use anything. I would say that art really is about creating. And so you can use, scraps of paper to create a collage, and you don't even need to glue it. You can sort of leave the pieces and come back tomorrow and recreate it the next day, or old magazine clippings. Just if you feel like you're exercising your imagination. Again, I think imagination sort of just opens up your world. And so it's really healthy tool to use in itself rather than even having to have like sort of tangible tools.
Okay, so then this leads me sort of to my last question, but it's also a question someone asked. So I think, a question a lot of people ask is what makes art valuable? And someone asked the question, how can I tell if something I drew or painted looks good? So, I mean, that is a question, right? Is everybody an artist? Is it about just that, or is it part of the human experience?
I think it is a really interesting time right now because the economy of the art world is, sort of on pause. And so it really makes us reflect on what the value of art is outside of currency
Yeah.
almost, is that the human experience. And it was only in, I think, 1833 with Gautier who said art for art's sake. And we've really been learning what that means, I think, in the last, just under 200 years, is art is a tool. Art is a tool for communication. And I think that it's really hard to say sort of good or bad art because it's in the eye of the beholder. Yeah. But it communicates something that you're feeling. And it's, also we've been communicating with art since like the earliest cave paintings, I think like 40,000 years ago. It's really pure form of communication. And so if it makes you feel something, if it communicates something to somebody else, that means that it is art.
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard to sort of say good or art or bad art because you can find an audience for everything.
That's true. There's probably like a caveman who was like, yo, buddy, your cave drawings suck. And then now we're like, look at these cave drawings.
Exactly. Also, even if we're thinking about in present day history, Modigliani, who has one of the highest auction records on record, he died completely destitute. Nobody bought his artwork while he was living. And so, not to say that that is the key to success is just wading through history, but I think it's also understanding that if you feel really passionately about it and purely about it, and it means something to you, then that is the most important part of art. And I think that the these really astronomical prices that are reached in auction sort of also are really toxic to the art world because people start to believe that that art is more valuable than other art. And I think that that's really counterintuitive.
Yeah. Okay, so this will be the last question, but a whole bunch of people have asked it. Is there a documentary or something on Netflix that, you would recommend or that you've ever seen? I know you mentioned the YouTube. Not to put you on the spot.
I know, I watch so much art programming that it's all a blur. But
is there a good source for art programming? Like, is there a good station that people can tune into? Or
I find the podcasts really the best because I don't think mainstream media is that focused on the art world. I do think that there are just so many facets of it that it's sort of hard and not often like a generalized area. And then also it really breaks down into region and country and medium. So there is an art on Netflix. I am completely escaping right now.
We can put it in the comments on the IGTV later, though. But you know what, though? Another really cool thing for anyone who's watching, if you go to Ash's 9th editions, which I've tagged in my story ahead of time, and I'll tag in the comments on IGTV. Ash, you want to say a little bit about what you're doing in your stories? Because it's been a way that I've been learning about art for the last couple of days.
Sure. Just, in sort of response to all of our isolation, I've been building something called the ABCs of art, so art terms. And I often think that this lexicon of terms that you don't immediately understand is one of the barriers why people don't understand it. So every day I'm doing a new letter, going through the whole alphabet, and hopefully then starting at A again, but hopefully
it'll be out of quarantine.
Exactly. Just going through, so abstract art, figurative art, environmental art, what do they mean? Who are some of the key figures? And hopefully just that introduction of these initial terms. Maybe you'll find something that you really like. I've had a really great response to environmental art because that's something that a lot of people can relate to, and it's something that we're talking about on a global level. So how does art and environmentalism, how do they come together?
Well, Ash, thank you so much for joining us and enlightening me and everyone else. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And I will put all of these resources together in a really concise list because there are too many to name. And
yeah, that would be great. And then I can put it up on my story, and it'll be in the whatever you call those things. I'm so not tech savvy. The stories that always show up on my profile under the Going Live.
Okay.